right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So in today's episode, I interview Summit Strength client Sonia, who is 3/4 through a training and preparation journey to Thru-Hike the Te Araroa Trail in New Zealand, which if you haven't heard before is a 3,000-kilometre thru-hike. Now, in this episode, she shares some insights around her training and preparation so far, and also her experiences on some recent shakedown hikes and how things have improved and what her plan of attack is leading in to the final part of her preparation for this amazing trip. So if you're interested in a bit of a thru-hiking adventure or you just want to hear a great training story, this is going to be an awesome listen for you. So with that being said, let's get into it. All right, welcome, Sonia. A big welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rowan. Happy to be here.
Super excited to have you on because, as we were sort of saying just before we hopped on the call, I think your story, your journey, and the journey you've gone through so far is going to be super inspirational for a lot of people coming up, and a really, really, really valuable story for a lot of people who may be considering a particular type of hiking trip. So I'm very excited to have you on. So I guess to kick things off, if you just want to give us a little bit of background about yourself and just let us know who you are, where you're from, what do you do, and what is your background in hiking?
All right. Yeah, sure. I'm Sonia and I am an Aussie. I'm from Sydney, but I actually live in a really cool little mountain town in Idaho, just surrounded by wilderness. I'm a structural integration practitioner. That's my work, but I'm getting more and more into hiking. Probably because of where I live. I didn't grow up hiking. I didn't really get into it till I moved here. Um, and I just am, as I've shared with you in the past, Rowan, I'm surrounded by people in this town who just get out into the wilderness and do really cool things. And I think I think for me, hiking started when I first moved to town and I went on this middle fork of the Salmon River week-long trip with 18 women. It was a bachelorette women's trip run by all these women who I didn't know, who were just rad outdoors women. And I'd never done anything like that before. Like I'd never set up a tent. I didn't know where you were supposed to go to the toilet. I didn't know anything about rivers and hiking. And we just did all this really cool stuff. And by the end of that trip, I think my hiking wilderness self was born because I just couldn't believe that you could go into these amazing places and just, be in the wilderness for a week and live. And so that was sort of, I don't know, I think I was in my late 20s and that's how I really got into loving the outdoors and hiking and how can I spend as much time out there as possible.
Yeah, good. And then I guess before we start working together, we'll talk about all that in a minute. What was your typical approach to exercise and training, whether that was outdoor related or just for your general life or whatever it may be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I was not training at all. I was just like trying to feel fit and healthy. So like I'd walk to work a lot. Fortunately, my office is close to home and just walking and doing, a bit of core strength and a bit of stretching at home and getting out hiking, but I wasn't actually training. I've done training in the past, like a long time ago, I used to do triathlons and stuff like that, but it had been, I don't know, decades since I'd done any proper training. So it was pretty haphazard, to be honest.
And then what was the big goal that you set for yourself when it came to your hiking? And what was the inspiration and instigator behind this particular goal?
It's a big goal. Still a bit daunting. I'm going to walk the entire length of New Zealand on the Te Araroa route, which is about 3,000 kilometres. Um, why? I don't know, really. There's sort of just always been this urge inside to do a really long walk. I don't know where it comes from. Maybe it's genetic. Um, I just have wanted to do something like this for about a decade. And, my daughter just graduated from university. There are things happening with my work that are shifting, and I just thought this is the time to do it.
And then with this in your sights, what made you decide to reach out for a little bit of extra help with your preparation? And what were the things you kind of knew you needed a bit of help with specifically?
I knew it was a lofty goal and that I just did not have all the knowledge that I need to have a successful walk. I know a fair bit about the body because of my work. I know a bit about nutrition, but I knew what I didn't know. So I always hire an expert if I need to achieve something beyond my skill level. And so I was listening actually to you be interviewed by someone, I think a bunch of Aussie guys, and I went, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, because you were saying things that I had never heard before. And that's when I decided to reach out and chat with you and see if you could help me.
And then tell us a little bit about the training you've done so far with Summit Strength. Like what does the program look like? What types of things you've been doing? Talk us through that.
It's been fantastic, so doable. So I do a couple of days of strength training just at home with equipment that I've got, which I like because I can do it whenever I want to. And then, there's pack walk training with a heavy pack, which has been progressing. I think I started in January, so I've had a good long, I don't know, 9 months or so of training. So it's been increasing. Hill climbs, which I love to hate, which I'm so happy I've done because they're so effective. But yeah, hill climbs. Oh, those were so rough. And just heaps of other really nuanced things that I'd never done before. I forgot about balance work. So that was interesting to realize that my balance wasn't that great and be doing balance work. And yeah, just very doable, very specific, effective training, so that right now, 9 or 10 months in, I feel really strong and capable.
Yeah, fantastic. And just for context for the listeners, for Sonia being one of the lucky few who doesn't have to scrape and scrounge to find any type of elevation to train on or any type of hills, she's had some great fun with all the hill training where we've been able to do some really fun stuff and really cool sessions, which some of the flatlanders, well, we'll get in some degree, but maybe not quite as intense as what she's been doing. So that's been good fun watching. So, so when it comes down to any type of, I guess, training journey, obviously no training journey is ever linear. There's always a million and one things that come up along the way, good, bad, and whatever. So as you've been going through so far, what have been some roadblocks that have come across, that you've come across along the way so far, and how did you go about overcoming them?
Yeah, it's a good question. Over time, there's always going to be roadblocks, aren't there? And I've been so grateful that I can just reach out to you whenever I hit one and you can give me a workaround, which seems to always work. The first one was that I changed shoes. Because I wanted to wear trail runners on my walk. And it took a while for my feet to get used to them. And I had a fair bit of heel pain in my right foot, which I'd never had before. I've got really good feet, so this was new for me. And I think with the increase in, mileage and carrying a heavy pack, particularly on pavement when it was still snowy and that's all I had to walk, my foot was really sore and I was worried. And you just you just said, oh yeah, you just got to do this quarter heel lift calf raise thing several times, and it worked and it got rid of it. So that was amazing. The heel pain, and then probably well, the hill climbs, as I mentioned, the hills that I had available to me are straight up, and like there's sagebrush right alongside. So it's really hard to use your poles. And I just hated them. I felt really sick, like nauseous. And because I'm really determined, I just would do them. But I found them really challenging. And you kind of shared with me that that's absolutely normal, that it's common sometimes for people to get nauseous on hills, and adjusted things. And So I stuck with it, and I have to say that I'm so glad I did because it's really made a big difference to my actual backpacking hill climbs. And then just really, I mean, the roadblock of doing these really long backpacking training walks, I think they're up to 6 hours or something now. But again, when I only had roads available, I'm lucky I live in the mountains now. There's endless places, but I was just walking roads for 5 or 6 hours and it was boring. And I don't listen to music or anything. I like to just be where I am, but I had to come up with ways to make it interesting because it was a bit repetitive. So I really feel for people who are trying to train in the city. I reckon that'd be quite quite a challenge. So, but anyway, move through all that, and I'm not feeling any roadblocks anymore.
So from that, two things I'd love to dive into just a little bit. We'll go back to the hills to start. So when you were, because this is, as you said, pretty common thing a lot of people run into, whether they're hiking or whether they're doing hill training, where they do begin to feel a bit gross as they're going through. Can you remember specifically what you adjusted to kind of help that feel a bit more manageable?
Yeah, I went slower than I thought I needed to because the way you had me doing it was 3 minutes hard, 3 minutes, easy nose breathing, 3 minutes hard, like that, and on it went. And so I adjusted my hard to be a lot easier than I thought. Even though I was still puffing, it was easier than I originally went out. So that really helped. And also taking a bit more of a rest in between those 3 minute cycles really helped. So really just pace and a little bit of rest, like only maybe not even a minute rest made a big difference.
And then when you were talking about the longer walks, and particularly the road walks, and get a little bit boring, and you're not a big fan of music, what did you do specifically to kind of help you mentally get through those?
Yeah, it was quite a fun exercise, actually. I'm like, how can I make this interesting? Um, so I'd take my paints, and I think one time when I had a little break for food, I'd sit and just do a little painting or something. That was kind of interesting. Obviously, tried to pick different routes every time if I could. And then I went, oh, maybe I'll walk at night or like start at 3 a.m. or something and walk under the moon. And that was really cool, actually, because I might have to do that a couple of times on TA, just if there's tides or rivers or something that has a timing factor. And I really enjoyed that. It was so novel. I'd be halfway through and then the sun would be coming up and the birds would be singing and there's no one around. So I just kind of tried to create novelty and it really helped.
Yeah, nice. Ah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that in itself will be super useful to a few people listening because that is definitely a pretty common roadblock when we're doing the road walking and I don't particularly love it, but we know we need to do the distance and this and that. So yeah, I think that'll be super useful. Awesome. So obviously now that we're talking now, we are not quite at the big trip yet. Still a little ways to go and you haven't done it yet. But you have, and the reason why I wanted to get you on is because you have recently come back from, well, I guess a couple of cool adventures. So tell us about them. What did you do? How did they go? Give us a sort of story there.
Yeah, sure. It's great to be able to actually do backpacking as my backpacking training because that's the best training there is. And I can go out my door and have this amazing wilderness. So I have done a couple of trips. The most recent one we just got back from last night, actually, which was 4 days in the White Clouds wilderness area, which is about an hour and a half north of where I live. And it was really such an incredible training experience on so many levels because there were things that I either hadn't ever done before or were a bit out of my comfort zone, quite out of my comfort zone. So we were regularly above 10,000 feet. So there was a lot of altitude, which of course you feel. I live at altitude, but not that high. So we used the nose breathing method, which that's always in my head, that you've taught me you want to be breathing through your nose, otherwise it's not sustainable. So going up really high, one of the peaks we crossed was 10,800 feet. And I just was really conscious of going really slowly so that I didn't get out of breath at all. So it was handy for altitude management. There was some technical, like, not quite climbing, but scrambling up there. We went up this peak called Patterson Peak that like ends up being sort of a knife edge where there's just, room for your feet. And we hadn't really researched it well enough to understand how technical it was. So we were both out of our comfort zones and just had to talk each other like, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. And it was such a learning experience in really, really understanding the route a bit better. We went up and sort of were on this little peak, incredible views. And then the other side was, 40 to 50 degree, really loose scree. So every step slid for a couple of hours. That was really challenging for me, just from a psychological standpoint of, am I going to fall and die? Because it's one thing to do that without a pack, but when you got 30 plus pounds on your back, it's a bit windy and, your pack can just throw you off balance. So it was such a good lesson in managing where my pack was and how I walked so that it was never going to pull me down the mountain. It brought up an issue that I had never had before, which was because we were making these big steps down such a slippery slope for so long that I ended up having quite bad pain in like the balls of my feet. I think because of how I was landing repeatedly. So that I had to manage that foot pain. It didn't become blisters. I think it just was an impact issue, really. So I kind of went, well, I need socks with a bit more padding and need to adjust my walking technique. And then we put our feet in the creek whenever we could just to ice them and sort of help that out. We spent a lot of time, we had made our own maps, topo maps. So we spent a lot of time off trail, just finding our own routes and reading the landscape to sort of pick our route and could we go up that creek, waterfall or not, and crossing creeks, which was like crossing creeks that were covered with wood and like, just stuff, like thick, brushy stuff, like thorny things. And so where you really have to like reach over and like step carefully every step and try to find where to cross. And so that's where in my head, I was really thinking, I'm so grateful I've done all that balance work I was talking about, because I could do those maneuvers with my pack and my poles and not feel like I was going to fall over. That was really, really helpful. So in the end, just an absolutely stunning trip, 4 days, just up and over these different passes, camped at beautiful lakes, incredible. We didn't see tons of people. There were a couple of days where we were completely alone and long, tiring days. I think we did about 10 miles a day, but like technical, lots of climbing and altitude, and I loved it. I feel like I've come out of that trip just feeling so much stronger and more capable, because there'll be some of that on TA. I know there's some technical stuff and certainly a lot of river crossings and route finding. So I feel like I'll be able to do it, or I'll be able to take the time to make good decisions along the way.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned a few challenges you kind of ran in there, a few things that were like, had to be pretty intentional. Were there any other challenges that you kind of ran into on these adventures that maybe unexpected, or just kind of you had to deal with?
I mean, this is a boring challenge, but other people might have this. I've got really sensitive skin. I'm allergic to tons of things, one of them being rubber, which, I mean, you're sleeping on a rubber mat. There's a lot of rubber involved in hiking. So that's a real challenge that I still haven't figured out. And I think I mentioned on our previous backpack, we were eaten alive by mosquitoes and black flies and even ticks. And, my skin, I just, my skin just goes into a whole body rash and it's not fun. So I did have a bit of that on this trip as well, I think, because we were sweating and there was a lot of friction and all the things and bugs again. So skincare is a challenge I have yet to figure out. I don't know yet how I'm going to deal with that. It'll be a different climate. But one thing I do is I've got a silk liner that I put on my sleeping pad because silk is really good for my skin and it's a bit of luxury. It's this tiny little thing. It weighs practically nothing. And when I have my silk liner on, I feel like I'm in luxury and it helps my skin out. So that's kind of an expected boring challenge that I have on these long hikes.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned the silk liner. That's one of my always packing wherever I go, whether I'm like hiking or just traveling. Just having that for whatever type of bedding you deal can be so nice because you're like, yeah, I've actually got this and I know it agrees with my skin. So there you go. Funny you mentioned that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
awesome, awesome, awesome. So, and then coming out of the back of this, so obviously big trips still ahead. And these were kind of shakedown trips and obviously adventures in their own rights to go out and enjoy yourself. But coming off the back of these adventures, is there anything you feel like, okay, now in this final lead up, I need to kind of hone in a little bit more on, or I need to change, or I need to deal with, or whatever it may be for your preparations for the TA?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I do feel pretty well prepared, which I'm amazed at because I didn't know I would feel this way. Uh, there's two things I can think of. One is I forgot to mention that, I have issues with my right leg. It was in a bad car accident 20 years ago, and I have osteoarthritis in my hip and my knee, and my whole right leg is just a bit wonky. So it doesn't bother me when I'm hiking, but at night when I'm lying down sleeping, it can really ache and I can't find a comfortable position. So you've given me some stretches and mobility stuff to do, and that really helps. Sometimes it's hard when you get into camp and it's dark and you're just setting up and going straight in. But that's something I still have to dial in, is figuring out how I can get my leg to not ache at night because it's really uncomfortable. But I think that the stretches and really getting that into a routine and a habit every single night at camp, even if I do it inside my tent once it's all set up away from the mosquitoes, will really help. The other thing is continuing to hone route finding skills and river crossing skills, because there's a lot of river. I think there's more than 200 river crossings on TA and a bit of route finding. It's mostly mapped out, but not always. So I am actually booked into a class that I'm taking in New Zealand a few days before I start walking that will help me with that. I've got a fair bit of river experience because I'm a kayaker, but you don't walk across rivers in a kayak. The goal is to not be in the river. So that's a skill that I am going to get a bit more training on for safety, and also understanding New Zealand weather patterns because they're very extreme. I think a bit like Tassie, they can change at any moment. So I want to be really confident that I can make good decisions based on weather, terrain, and, looking ahead by that week to make sure I don't end up in a place where I'm stuck in really bad weather. So those are the things that really come to mind. Otherwise, I feel pretty on track to start walking.
Fantastic. And And then for the listeners' reference, we are recording this end of July. Probably will be released in 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. When are you actually heading off on the adventure?
Well, I'm going to go via Sydney to see my family and friends on the way. And then I aim to start at the beginning of October, somewhere in the 1st to the 3rd of October. And I'll be working for maybe 5 months. I don't know how long it's going to take, but yeah, starting soon.
Yeah, super, super, super exciting. And I really hope, like obviously hope you have a great adventure, but hopefully we'll be able to get you back on the podcast on the tail end of that. So people will be able to listen to not only this one in the lead up and like, 3 quarters through your prep, but also, afterwards and get the full trip report. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But I think, today's been awesome. And I think it's been really, really, really great just having you on, having a bit of a chat through your prep so far. And I think a few of the things you've mentioned are definitely going to resonate with a lot of people who may be going through similar challenges or running into similar things. And a few of the tips I think are going to be super, super useful. So it's been really, really, really great having this chat. Now, before I do wrap up, was there anything else that I didn't get a chance to cover or ask you, which you think might be useful for any of the listeners leading into something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I'd like to point out that I'm a pretty just regular person. I don't have special skills. Like I said, I didn't grow up hiking. I'm 57, so that presents its own physiological challenges. And I think that it, there's a phrase that I love to consider that might be helpful. When I thought about doing this walk and it became real, I said to myself, well, am I capable? And I thought, I'm not capable yet, but I'm capable of making myself capable. And I think that's been really valuable. And I think training with you has helped me feel like I'm capable and ready. And so just to put it out there that if someone wants to do something like this, you probably can. So just have a go.
Fantastic. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, on that note, then I want to say a big, big, big thank you for coming on today. I think it's been an awesome episode. I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy it, and I really appreciate you taking the time. So thank you so much for coming on.
No worries, Rowan. Happy to.
So there you go, guys. I really do hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I really do hope it's inspirational for maybe a few people who are considering a big adventure like this in the future. As I mentioned, I will hopefully get Sonia on a podcast again on the tail end of her adventure, so we can get a little bit of an update on how it all went. Now, last thing I will say before I wrap this up, as I always say, if you were interested in learning a little bit about the online personal training that Sonia is using to prepare for this Thru-Hike, you can go to summitstrength.com.au/online. Now, on that page, there's a big video, talks a lot about what our program's all about. And if it sounds like something you'd like to explore a little bit more, there's a link on that page. You can book a free call with our team, and we can have a bit of a chat and learn about you, your hiking, your training, and see if we might be able to help you out. So if you want to learn more, go to summitstrength.com.au/online and we can take it from there. So thank you so much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye.